Hello, everybody. My name is Nick, and I'd like to welcome you to Space Rocks and Stardust. So today I'd like to take some time to talk to you guys about this little guy right here, the Dwarf II Smart Telescope from Dwarf Labs. It's been almost a year since I got this little telescope, and I have to say, pound for pound, it is probably the best piece of astro gear I have ever bought, and definitely one of the most used. So before I get into the actual review of it, I will go through a few little things that kind of brought me to how I ended up with the Dwarf II Smart Telescope and how it really saved the hobby for me. Um, Made astrophotography fun again. There was a point about a year ago where I was just so frustrated, had really bad equipment issues, and was ready to give up. I actually had my rig and all the bits and pieces posted on Astro Buy and Sell, and I was ready to throw in the towel because I was done. I had originally ordered an EQM 35 Pro. Not saying anything bad about the mount in general, but I guess some are good and some are bad. They are relatively inexpensive. I thought it was a good way to get started in the hobby. I didn't really start astrophotography, I guess, the normal way. I never owned a DSLR, so after I started taking pictures through an eyepiece of an old Newtonian with an old iPhone and got hooked, I figured just jump right in with both feet, and I put together a full astrophotography rig on paper and designed it best I could, did a ton of research into what would work and what wouldn't, and tried to put it together on a budget. And sometimes that can be a mistake. I really didn't know where to spend the most amount of money, and that should have been the mount, but it wasn't. So I ordered the EQM 35 Pro, and it was really bad. I struggled with it. I scoured the forums to try to figure out what was wrong. I couldn't get decent guiding. I couldn't take any images over 30 seconds, or it was just a mess. My total RMS error on that mount would run anywhere between 5 to 10 to 20 to sometimes 50 seconds of error. It was just a disaster. I took it apart. I cleaned all the gears, re-greased everything with white lithium grease, did everything I could find to try to tweak it, did the worm gear spacing, adjusted the backlash, tried tuning it as best I could, and it just wasn't working. So it got to a point where I was just so frustrated and at a total loss. I was scrolling through YouTube one day looking for more information on that mount, and I came across a review for the Dwarf 2, which had just been released. So I watched it, and I was pretty fascinated by it. I didn't I didn't know. I had heard of smart telescopes, but they were something that really didn't make sense to me because ones like Stellina and scopes like that had been out for a while, but the price on them, like 5,000, you could put a really nice rig together for that kind of money. So I had never really considered them. But this little guy was on pre-sale for around 500. And after watching a bunch of videos on it, I figured why not try it out? At that point, 500 wouldn't be much of a loss. It was no good anyway. So I ordered one, and a couple weeks later it arrived. I took it out of the box and set it up. About a week later, of course, because it too came with clouds, just like every other piece of astro equipment ever. The first night I took it out, it took 3 minutes to set up and calibrate itself, and downloaded the app, and away we went. And I was shocked by it. It took some really incredible pictures. I think Its original intention was strictly EAA, electronically assisted astronomy, but because you can take the individual subframes and process them, you can use it for astrophotography. And I was kind of hooked on it because it was easy and it worked, and it had really decent results. It's of course nothing compared to a full-sized astro rig with a dedicated astro camera. I mean, this little guy, you're dealing with a 24 millimeter aperture and 100 millimeters of focal length, so it does so well for that size. I think it has a lot to do with Dwarf Labs' choice of picking the Starvis IMX415 sensor because it has tiny, tiny pixels. I think 1.45 micron, if I'm not mistaken. So it just works really well. It was so well designed. You can get some pretty good detail if you are patient with it. And I haven't been disappointed with it at all. It's incredible. The Dwarf runs in Alt-Az, so just like this, up and down and side to side. But you can run it equatorially, very easy. You just need a decent tripod. I use this one right here. It's been very good. It was relatively inexpensive. You can polar align it. There's all kinds of interesting 3D printed items that you can order for the Dwarf. I did find a little 3D printed polar scope that simply clips onto the side. So you can use it just like that. So line it up with Polaris on that angle and let it do its calibration. It'll figure out where it is and you can go from there. I noticed it really does help if you are shooting a larger target. It will cut down on that field rotation and allow you to keep your frame a little bit bigger without cropping so much. It also originally came with its own little tripod, which is fantastic. If you're just throwing it out and shooting a little bit with it, it works really well. Two neutral density filters and an ultra high contrast filter, which is also light pollution filter. It came with the magnetic filter holder, which is so easy to use. And it does take any 1.25" filters, so I had a bunch of my own already and got to do some playing around with different filters on it, and it was really fun, and it was nice to see the results that you could get from using different filters. This one also came with an extra battery, which wasn't a big deal. I do keep mine plugged into Celestron Powertank when it's running, just because it'll run for days on that tank, and I never have to worry about it. If you do have a Dwarf or have used one and you are looking for some different filters, there are two that I would really suggest for it. And this first one is the Baader IR Cut Moon and Skyglow Neodymium filter. It is fantastic for lunar. It's great for keeping natural star color. This is a great little filter. It's pretty inexpensive. And the other one is Baader's UHC-L booster. So it's basically a dual narrowband, so it would give you the opportunity during processing to split your image into hydrogen and oxygen and make kind of a Hubble palette type image, which is very cool, especially coming from something as small as this. It works really well. I did replace the Dwarf Labs stock UHC filter with the Baader filter. I think I got it on sale for $60, so they're relatively inexpensive as far as filters go too. Definite huge upgrade, better color, a little better clarity. It works really well. Nothing against the UHC filter that Dwarf Labs chose to use, I understand. To keep costs low, they did the best they could with finding kind of a generic light pollution filter that works in any scenario, and it does a great job. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just this one definitely a little better color, and like I said, being kind of a dual narrowband, it gives you the opportunity to play around a little in post-processing, which is always fun. One other 3D printed item that I did get for my dwarf, I found it on, I think it was on Etsy, was a 3D printed Bahtinov mask for focusing. This is fantastic. Dwarf Labs did an awesome job with the autofocus feature on this little guy, but nothing beats having a Bahtinov mask to focus, and it's so easy. It just clips in. Find yourself a bright star and play with your focus until you get those beautiful spikes, and then you know that you're 100% in focus, and it works every time. I did get the Bahtinov mask, the little polar scope, and a base plate protector in a package deal. I think it was $20 for everything from a seller on Etsy, and it was a pretty good investment. And it all comes in this very nice, very well made little carry case. Lots of room in there for everything, and it's so small. It's so easy to grab it and take it anywhere. You can set it up in minutes, and it is shooting in minutes, and it's fantastic. I would consider taking it with me to any event for any kind of photography. I mean, even the daytime photography for this is phenomenal, and they have done a lot of work on the app to get some really cool features, some really cool panorama features and burst mode features. It's really interesting stuff. Very cool time lapse features on the wide angle. It would be great for any event. It does auto track in daylight, so it will find an object and track it, like a bird or a car or anything like that. Definitely some very cool software. It does have a telephoto and wide angle lens. It's a dual lens system. The package does come with a 64 gig micro SD card, which just slots into the back here. And it does have an adapter, so you can load it into your PC or laptop to take your images off and process them or save them. There's the battery compartment in the back. It does fit on any standard tripod. This little strip on the back here is actually the heat transfer strip for the CPU. It does act as a dew heater system, which is kind of nice. It does operate in cold weather very well. I've had it out in minus 15, minus 20 degrees Celsius, and it has performed the same as it does when it's 20 degrees above. There are a lot of reviews out there, especially when the Dwarf 2 first came out. They're all really good, so check out whatever you can find if you're thinking of buying one. I guess mine was a little more of a look back over the year, and a little backstory on what happened with it. I do see a lot of negative stuff around it, especially on the forums and places like that, which I wish it wasn't out there, but it is. I've heard people call them a hobby killer. I couldn't disagree with that more. I guess the thinking behind that is, people with a mild interest in astronomy buy them and then use them for a little bit, and they end up in the attic or in the garage sale or whatever. I really don't think that's the case. I'd like to compare it when somebody calls something a hobby killer in astronomy I'd always like to compare it to those department store scopes. I mean, they're terrible most of the time, and unfortunately, they're highly advertised. If you Google right now the top 10 telescopes, I guarantee that none of them are worth buying. They're all probably bad. Those to me are the real hobby killers. Somebody would spend, sometimes even $200 or $300 on a scope from a department store, and a lot of the times they're big names, which is the sad part. And they put this thing together and they take it out in the field, and it's got a terrible mount and it's shaky and wobbly, and they look through it and they can't see anything, and they've been conned into thinking that the biggest selling feature is magnification. How many times magnification? Oh, this is 300 times magnification. That's not what it's about. It's about the ability to gather light. That's the biggest thing, and they're disappointed, and it goes back in the box and it lives in the garage or in the attic until they throw it on a buy and sell and get rid of it, and somebody else has a horrible experience, and they never ever bother trying to do anything with astronomy again, which is sad. With these little smart scopes at this price, this one, the ZWOC Star is another good example. That $500 to $700 range, I don't think you can miss with them because they are so easy to use. Anybody can buy one, download the app, watch a couple videos on YouTube, whatever, and take it out in the field and turn it on and find an object and watch it appear on their phone screen, from this fuzzy little blob to this beautiful big bright nebula. And that's going to do way more for the hobby of astronomy than those terrible department store scopes. Once somebody sees that, they're usually hooked and they want more. I think more than anything, it is a fantastic gateway into the hobby. They are technical enough, it can teach people about astrophotography. It can teach you about exposure times and things like that. It's really easy to learn how to do a little bit of post processing with these and take, you know, 1,000 frames that are 15 seconds long of an object and learn how to stack them and clean them up and get rid of some of the noise and spit out a really good image. I mean, for the price and size, the images are really good. I can't say enough about it. I will show you a nebula I shot with this Dwarf II telescope, and I also shot it with my full-size astrophotography rig. It is IC 1805, the Heart Nebula. The first picture is with the Dwarf II, that is 999 frames, all 15 seconds long, shot from my Bortle 8 inner city light pollution backyard with the Baader UHC-L filter. And the next image will be the same nebula shot from my Bortle 8 backyard with my full-size astrophotography rig, but it was 13 and a half hours. It was 2.5 nights of data collection to get that second image. And of course, it's a better image. There's no denying that. But that image cost about $7,500 to get, whereas the dwarf image was $500 and, well, $560 with the filter and a couple hours. So is the second image $7,000 better? I don't know. You tell me. So I guess it comes down to whether or not you should buy the Dwarf 2 if you're thinking about it. I have to say yes on that. I'm glad I did. It saved the hobby for me. It reignited a spark that was definitely dying, and it was fun. It's always fun. I still take it out all the time, more than my full-size rig. If I do have my full-size rig out, the Dwarf is usually beside it, doing something, shooting something. I do a lot of solar captures with it. It does fantastic with that. Dwarf Labs' last app update was a game changer. Expanded object catalog, lunar stacking, solar stacking. It's a fantastic job. They are 100% hands on. They have the best customer service. They are very one on one. If you have an issue, you will be in direct contact with the team. Just this morning, I did get an email from Dwarf Labs. It looks like there is something big on the horizon. They're being very vague about it, but I get it. I am really, really interested to see what is coming next, if they designed a whole new scope or what's going on. A little hard to tell at this point. There's not much information out there. If I do learn anything, I will definitely keep you updated. It'll be interesting to see what's next. If you look on Instagram and places like that, there are some accounts where people are using exclusively these units, and the images are amazing. Like it's just mind blowing. I would never think something the size of an old VHS tape would have that much power and ability, but they are phenomenal. So to end the video, if you were on the fence about Dwarf and weren't sure whether or not you should get one, and you have some interest in astronomy or astrophotography and learning how everything works, it is a can't miss buy. It is a fantastic product with an even more fantastic team behind it. Not sure what the big news is going to be, so I can understand if you want to hold off and wait for what might be the next generation. That's fine. But with the Dwarf 2, you cannot miss. It is definitely worth more than its weight and punches way above its weight. It is a fantastic little scope, easy to use, light, portable, just great all around. So thanks for tuning in, and hopefully somebody else out there is getting clear skies, because I'm not. And we will see you next time.